I'm delighted to start introducing Jo Mary Koopman from All Care VNA and Hospice.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me? Great. As you can see from the sign here with home health aid and recruitment, I don't think that there's anyone here that hasn't experienced some sort of frustration with recruiting staff over the past year especially, as well as retaining staff as well. So what I'm going to do in my presentation is just go over some of the elements that we've used as far as recruiting our staff, some of the challenges we've faced, but we also looked at over the past 2 years our turnover rate, and we recognized that we needed to do a much better job with retaining our staff. So about 18 months ago, we put some initiatives in place that I'll share with you today, and it has really proven fruitful for us as our retention rate has improved year over year by 35 more home health aides, and with our recruitment being flat, that's really given us a boost in our hours, so I'll certainly share that with you. As far as recruitment, most of us, I'm sure everyone has done advertising. Most of you, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Craigslist, Indeed, agency website. In my role at All Care, I oversee the VNA, our hospice, and our private duty division, but I also oversee all of HR and recruitment and our sales and marketing. And my hat in HR has come in handy as far as, all three companies, because really recruiting and retaining staff are imperative for the growth of our organization. So as far as advertising, Craigslist, I think everyone's pretty familiar with. Indeed, I wanted to put up there because, Indeed is a different type of advertising vehicle. It's not just a website you go and advertise, it's actually a search engine. And I don't know if all of you are aware of that. Similar to like Google Analytics, where there's certain keywords that bring your ads up to the top of the search engine. So it's very important. I would recommend that everyone, if they haven't already, meet with their Indeed rep in order to get what those keywords are. And there's certain amounts that you can put attached to each job as far as how much you're willing to spend. When that caps out, you go to the bottom of the list. And everyone's recruiting on there, so you always want to stay at the top of that list. So you want keywords, you want to make sure that your cap is as effective and efficient as it can be. And the other interesting piece is with Indeed, if a potential applicant clicks on it, there is a landing page that they can go to that talks about your company. We weren't aware of this. Indeed put in a landing page on their own for us, and they put in All Care in England, a manufacturing company. So we were wondering why we weren't getting any applicants driven to our organization. So very important for you to be able to meet with your representative so you can definitely maximize how many people are searching on the website and driving to you. Open houses, I'm sure all of you have had open houses. Down the bottom of this page, I have advertising on building. We're fortunate to be housed right on a main road in Lynn is our main office, and we put a big banner on the outside, and on the other side is the MBTA station, a big banner on that side, on the other side of the building, and now 10% of our applicants are walk-in applicants from these signs. So we, always when someone is being recruited by us, we track where all of our applicants are coming from and how many transition into hires. But that was a pleasant number within the past 2 years, just because of that simple putting a sign on the outside of our buildings. As far as I put direct mail campaign, I'm sure most of you, if not all, are aware that the CNA registry has, you can purchase the names on the CNA registry. You can sort them by address and do a direct mail campaign to the CNAs, recruiting them to home care. I'm sure that will soon be coming with the home health aid registry for home health aides as well. So we have to be, on top of our toes not to lose our staff. But that's something that we've done this past year. We don't get great outcomes, but when we do get a CNA and they come to our organization, they have experience and we have a great retention rate with them. So certainly a worthwhile endeavor. There's a lot of training programs out there. We have a Red Cross that we that we go to their graduations frequently. We don't have tremendous success from there because you're competing with the assisted living facilities, the skilled nursing facilities that tend to pay a higher rate, but they're still yielding about 10, 12 people per graduation class. Home health aide training I added, we happen to have a training facility and curriculum in our office, but we were having difficulty recruiting individuals to our training program. But what we did find, and we now are currently doing a training, and we're doing another one for December. We have about 10 people in our class, but our retention rate for our own home health aide training is over 70%. Because what we're graduating is quality individuals. So depending on your capacity to do training or not, it's certainly a worthwhile endeavor because of that retention rate. And we used to have a full-time trainer, couldn't afford a full-time trainer anymore, so we really revamped our curriculum and actually had our home health aide managers do the training, which worked out better because they're already engaging their staff. So we do have our 2 home health aide managers share the training, which has worked out well for us. Sign-on bonus, recruitment bonus, I'm not sure if you've explored that at all. We currently have a $500 sign-on bonus, $500 recruitment bonus, and I've seen that on advertisement out there. It's not necessarily a huge driver to our organization. What the driver is sharing that information with all of our aides that you can earn $500 by driving someone to our organization. So we saw an uptick when we changed the sign-on bonus to a referral / sign-on bonus. And I also mentioned the advertising on the building. I just put, we've heard it earlier, our unemployment rate, 2.9%. So we're all feeling that tug for that worker walking in your door. And I was just talking to someone, we contract not with only our VNA and our hospice for our aides, we also contract with ASAPs, and we have a contract with Mystic Valley Elder Services, and that's a very challenging area for us now because of Encore, who's paying their homemakers. I put 20. Last I heard, last week was someone coming in was $25 per hour for that homemaker, so to be able to get 40 hours in one place. So there are certainly challenges that are out there, and Encore is certainly one of them for us. So as I mentioned earlier, what we did about 2 years ago is we decided to focus on retention. The market's tight out there to draw people in the door. We said we've got to do something differently. And we've always talked about it, but we really needed to put some teeth to it. Of course, with retention, you have to be competitive, as far as pay and benefits. And I know minimum wage is going from $12 to $12.75, and will eventually be to $15. So I think we're all pretty much paying in the home care industry within a certain competitive range. But what we found when we got a small group of our aides together to find out what's really keeping you here, what do you need? They wanted consistency and less travel, so that's challenging sometimes when you've got patients in a lot of different communities. So what we decided to do is, and I'm kind of going a little bit out of sequence, we said from the get-go we need to have our management team and our schedulers touch that home health aide as much as possible. So first off, for our home health aide managers, they when a home health aide is hired, they call once a week and check in with that aide. And we have them put them on a spreadsheet so we can hear and see what their concerns are, and we go over their concerns on a weekly basis. Sometimes I don't have enough hours, so it's up to the manager to talk to the scheduler, say, let's look at the schedule and get them more hours. So that's, one piece. And then the field supervisor, we're with the ASAPs, we have to go out on a, quarterly basis. We started for the first 3 months, our field supervisor goes out once a month and checks in with that aide. To nip any problems in the bud if there's any, quality problems, but even more importantly, to check in to make sure that they're engaged and satisfied, with their job, they're getting enough hours. Same type of, check-in that we have the managers do. So they're getting it from the field supervisor, they're getting it from the manager as well. And then for the schedulers, we mandate that each of our schedulers, they're all assigned a group of, about 40 aides, that they have to check in with every single one of their home health aides on a weekly basis. I don't, if it's just a hello, but just, again, you want to engage your field staff that are out there. So we had involved our schedulers as well. And then we also, on a monthly basis, our scheduling manager makes sure that the aides, we examine their schedules. It's interesting, as you're trying to fill cases, you're just plotting and putting them in. But when you're looking at, an aide traveling to 4 or 5 cities and towns, they don't want to do that traveling. There's, gaps in times. That's part of the reason they're leaving. So that examination is really critical to make sure that you're maximizing, their productivity in a smaller geographic area, which will certainly help them. I put in here agency vehicle. We have an agency vehicle just for if an aide's vehicle breaks down, just so it helps with client satisfaction with missed visits, but it also helps with our aides too to make sure that they continue with that income. I know other agencies have looked at partnering with Uber and Lyft. I've heard a lot of that as well. It can be, costly, but it's really helped to the satisfaction of our aides. Again, trying to maintain that consistent wage and full-time hours that aide is looking for. Again, inclusion and employment and employee engagement. Making sure we have monthly events. We invite our aides in. Some show up, some don't, but we make it fun. We had a costume Halloween, party, and they all sent in pictures. We do an annual meeting, and they, at our annual meeting, out of our 600 employees, we have about 400 come. Because we give raffle prizes away. We do, give away a gift every year for them, and they really look forward to that. But what's great about that event and even our holiday party is, they get to know their coworkers, and that's part of, retaining and engaging your employees as well. This year, we've hired so far, January through October, pretty much the same amount of aides, which has been even more challenging to do that. So we've put a lot of effort in understanding some of these recruitment vehicles from Indeed that I mentioned earlier and some of the other platforms. But as far as our home health aides are concerned, we've had 35 less terms this year than last year as a result of our recruitment efforts. So our hours, we do about 30,000 hours a month in our private duty company. So our hours have been able to increase really as a result of our retention. And then lastly, I put in here, what we also did as well, we have an agency newsletter that goes to all of our employees. And while you think, what is a newsletter going to do? We started, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago when I was listening to a speaker talk about the impending legislation coming in about the home health aide registry, and the attorney at the time said, you do a lot for your employees, you need to be able to promote it. Which was a point well taken. So in our home health aide newsletter, we list the new hires. We always recognize 1 or 2 home health aides for their stories going above and beyond. We put in reminders in there as well. We talk about our policies, any upcoming changes, notices that are happening, but also promoting our agency events because we want them to be able to come to our event. So that gets emailed out to them on a monthly basis. Our, director of our private duty department has a lot of input in that as far as the recognition as well as the schedulers, and they work with our HR department to get it out to all of our workers. And that, the feedback we get about the newsletter and seeing their faces in the newsletter, if we graduate a class, we put it in the newsletter. It goes a long way with the staff.
Hi, I'm Joanne McGinnis from Aberdeen Home Care. We're located in Danvers, and I'm really honored to be sitting with these 2 pillars in the home care community to my left. Jo Mary is part of the infamous Kulovich family on the North Shore. Her mother was a nurse at Salem Hospital for, I think, like 70 years. And she's one of the most well-respected employees there. She might have been one of the longest employees at Salem Hospital. And Andrea Cohen, was featured in the Boston Globe, which you might have seen this great article about her innovative work with the dementia community, where you put on the goggles and they give you other, sort of burdens to deal with to simulate what it might be like. So aren't I lucky to be sitting with 2 such amazing colleagues. Aberdeen is a small private duty company, and we describe ourselves as the premier provider of concierge level home care. Who started with that bug? concierge provider of private duty services. We don't do any ASAP, we do bill long-term care insurance, but we're strictly a provider of private duty care on the North Shore and Greater Boston. Supply and demand. I don't think I have anything to say after Joe Mary. And Andrea said, by the time you get done, there'll be nothing left for me, so I'm going to the bar. So if you want to go to the bar with Andrea, she's leaving the minute I'm done. It's a seesaw for all of us. What is the workforce looking for? What do we have to offer them? But what are we looking for? You know, that's the third seat on that seesaw that's not there. We're not looking for every single person that comes to our Indeed site or walks in our door. We're not looking for those people. We remain selective even in an atmosphere of need and sometimes panic need. We remain selective because if we don't, we start to compromise our core values and we get into much more trouble than if we took that aid that just needed a little polishing or just needed a little work. I'm going to focus on the micro vision because I'm not a macro company, I'm a micro company. What we focus at Aberdeen is relationships, authentic relationships, and we can afford to do that because we're small. We can also afford to do innovative things that maybe when you're part of a very large company that has a lot of strings and a lot of control about budget, you just can't decide to do. Like birthday cards. We send out a birthday card, we throw in a $10 Dunkin' Donuts gift card. That's not a big outlay of cash, but when you start multiplying that by hundreds of people, there's money that might not be allocated to that. If you can't do the Dunkin' Donuts gift card, send a birthday card, but throw in some glitter. Throw in something that gets their attention. I think that's the issue today with all of us. It's not limited to home health aides or CNAs. It's what's grabbing for our attention all the time. And it's flashy and it makes noise and you know the phone and everything that we're doing. I can't remember who said it, but it was Helen talking about breaking down things in chunks of 5 to 7 minutes, nothing more than 15 minutes, because the attention span in this country doesn't exist, right? We have like a 30-second news flash, news bite, breaking news level of attention. So reading something or paying attention to something larger than that is not going to resonate. It's not going to get what you want, not going to get that grab from the people that are listening to you. So hourly wage, Joe Mary just talked about going up to $15 in 2023. And when you start piling the other things on top of that, and travel time and overtime, that's going to be an issue for many companies whose budgets are really tight. Benefits. We actually had to give up our health insurance because of the whole EMAC thing, which was heartbreaking for me. So we brought in a load of voluntary benefits, and to offset that, we gave everybody $15,000 of complimentary group term life insurance. What kind of company has cared about life insurance for home health aides? I think nobody. I mean, a lot of them didn't want to do it. They thought, oh, this is not all what it is. Somebody's going to show up at my house and sign on the dotted line. They didn't believe it was a gift because they sometimes have been an exploited group of people, this workforce. Career ladders. I think that there are some people, and it's well thinking, to think if you're in healthcare, you might like to, move up the ladder to a nursing position, but you might not be that candidate. Everybody who starts out in home health or CNA does not have the cognitive ability to move on to a professional role. And so if they are some of those people, and this is where they're going to stay, then how do we give them a sense of satisfaction and pride and accomplishment in the role that they're probably going to retire from? Not just in-house learning opportunities. Send people out, pay $50 to send them to a communication class or something like that. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the skill set. What I want to introduce to us to just ponder for a second is the soft skills, the communication, the relationship, the boundaries. That's the stuff that gets us in trouble. The boundaries, when the home health aide is going in talking about their broken down car, and all of a sudden, she says, well, I might not be able to come tomorrow because my car's not working. And, there goes to $250 in an envelope to get your car fixed. When you have remote caregivers in an unsupervised setting, your selection of those people is so critically important because it's not just the Hoyer lift and the transfer. It's not just that stuff that you're worried about. You're worried about how appropriate are they being in the home without somebody there to direct them. Field support. Joe Mary just mentioned about getting people together. Very hard in a home care where you have a 24/7 operation. But field support, and that someone's going to come out and see you in the home. And it might be a mentor. We have a mentor program at Aberdeen. It could be a supervisor. It could be anybody. Just coming out to see you in the field, and also the telephone check-ins. Incredibly important because people feel often alone and isolated. Culture. I think that's one of the most important things that people coming to Aberdeen are looking for is work culture. By and large, they're going to work on their own, right? By and large, they're not going to have a team of people they're working with. They're going to be working independently. But I tell everybody, and my colleague Scott Muir is here, he's that handsome man who looks like Hugh Bonneville. I say, the minute a home health aide shows up at the front door, everybody's up. Everybody's up. How are you doing? Do you need another shirt? Do you need this? Do you need that? Everybody's up. How are you doing? How are you doing? Another thing that we do that's unique is we do a bereavement wraparound. Sometimes in the private duty world, we can be with a client 5 years. There is an attachment. We are always working to make sure that attachment is professional and appropriate, but there's an attachment. I've been there myself. And so these folks that have been out there, you know, through every winter storm and every summer heat wave and all the rest of it that goes along have become attached. And it's a loss. And oftentimes they don't know how to process that. We send out a thank you note, and a bereavement note really is a bereavement note to people when they lose a client that they've been with for a long time. We've actually had services, like little, you know, not a big deal, but we bring people to the office, we'll have refreshments, we'll put a candle in the table, and we'll talk about, tell me your favorite story about Mrs. Smith. That goes a long way. Mentoring. You know, you might have an aide that comes from a rehab setting, and all of a sudden they might be assigned to a behavioral health client. So they have their core competencies and all, you know, everything in HR is all perfectly checked off, but when they get out there, they're very afraid of this patient or they're very intimidated. The mentoring role is really important because there's so many, I mean, I'm a nurse. I can think right off the top of my head of how many skills I have across the continuum. And if you have a new-ish home health aide or a new-ish CNA, they can't possibly have been exposed to everything they're going to run across in the field. Maybe somebody has an old mental illness that kind of pops out of nowhere and they start hallucinating, or they're having a medication reaction. So the mentoring process is expensive, but I think worth its weight in gold. Recognition. I'm going to jump right to our next slide. We do a quarterly Caregiver Champions at Aberdeen. So we have a catered lunch, we have a cake, we make a certificate. You know, it's a nice wooden certificate. I mean, I framed them myself. It's a DIY world in my company. No, I didn't make the cake, but I did frame the pictures. And we just send press releases. You know, it's bigger than here. I think that's the thing, is it's bigger than you in your client's home. It's bigger than what you see at Aberdeen Home Care. You're part of something in the world of home care. And just whatever agency you work for, we're all doing the same thing. We're all caring, we're all bringing, like, why are they working for us instead of Starbucks? Why? Because this gives them something Starbucks does not. You know, you can pass Clinique makeup out all day long, and you don't go home and tell your kids about who you sold the makeup to. You do go home and tell your kids about this moving experience. Don't most of your workers come with a personal story? Like they'll say, oh, I took care of my parents at home or something, and when they're giving back, right? They're passing it forward. And that's what we want to capitalize on, is that part of this job is a career, it's a way to, you know, it's versus Starbucks, but it's also a path of the soul in a way, right? This gives us something back that other jobs just don't give us back. And we want to make sure we feed that, because that's what keeps a lot of these aides going, is the feel good that they're getting from their patients. So we want to make sure we don't let that disappear in the macro of it, right? You know, the trainings, the this, the that, all valid, all valuable. I was taking notes like mad, like I got writer's cramp from taking notes. But let's not go, let's just walk it back a little to the heart of it and why this workforce is choosing to do this work versus something else that might even make a little bit more money. I think I'm done. Thank you.
I'm Andrea Cohen. I am with Houseworks, which I'll tell you about in a minute, and I'm really pleased to be here. And I love the way Pat talked about attacking the problem, and I feel like that's what we all have to do. And I'll probably just cut the way I talk about it a little bit differently than these guys, but I think we're all sort of trying to get at the same thing, and just it's creativity and innovation. So I think a lot about this, and my panelists have talked about this, but I thought I like charts, so I was just trying to figure out, because wherever you go, I didn't want to start with a bunch of statistics because you guys have already heard the statistics, but you think about where we are in home care, and then we think about these gig employers or these large employers, and how do we all look different? And I thought that was just really interesting. But what Joanne just said about mission and that we're mission driven, I think that remains sort of a big advantage to us. When I started in home care almost 25 years ago, home care had a unique value proposition with the fact that we were mission driven, but the fact that there was low barriers to entry, flexibility, and ability to control schedules, and that's what people wanted, and there really wasn't a lot of other ways to get it. But what's happening, as you know, and as you see, is that other employers are sort of cutting into our possibilities. Some of them are paying more, some of them have even more flexibility, and I just wanted to put that out there because I thought that was interesting to think about. There's a home care pulse survey, which I think a lot of you know that organization, that said that 32% of caregivers who are working for you today or working for a home care company interview every month with another company. So part of the problem is that they might be with us, but then we have to figure out a way to keep them with us because they're looking around because we don't always have hours for them. And that My CNA Jobs reports that up to 12% of caregivers say they've interviewed or worked for Amazon over the past year, just as an example. So I think, from a policy perspective, all of us in the home care and the healthcare industry have to just really, I look at it as a grid of putting what are they doing and what can we do more and how do we learn from that. I wanted to next talk about our turnover rate, but before that I just wanted to sort of introduce you to Houseworks. And so Houseworks, just to sort of set it for you, we've been in business for over 20 years. When I started the business, there was absolutely no problems with recruitment. We currently now in Boston have about 400 caregivers. We have an office in Philadelphia with about 100 caregivers. We're all out of pocket. We don't really have any contracts with Medicaid or ASAP, so it's just all client to client. About 50% of our business is 24-hour care, and about 50% or more live in senior housing. And the living in senior housing will also give you a sense of some of the ways we're recruiting and retaining workers now. So I just kind of wanted to level set that for you. And then when I speak about caregivers and what we're doing, I just want to read this to you, that our caregivers are more loyal to the company and more empowered to deliver better care when they control their schedule, receive higher than average industry pay, but most importantly, where they feel a personal connection. And that's, I think, what my co-panelists have said. And I honestly, I could get up here and tell you all the strategies we're doing, but at the end of the day, it's about how do you keep that personal connection and how do you sort of get inside who they are and what they're facing as people. And I think there's lots of strategies to do that, but I just sort of want to make sure that everybody knows that. The other thing that we've discovered over the years is that caregivers want and need tools to help them do their job better. And I think, again, when I first started in this industry, people didn't really have a lot of faith in that caregiver. We talk about upward mobility, but frankly, we've introduced tablets to home care, to our caregivers, and the tablets allow them to participate more fully. We make sure that every single care plan is up to date so they can look at the care plan and add to the care plan. But all of those kinds of things are really, really important to the folks that we provide care to. And I just wanted to make sure I told you that. So when we've been working at it really hard, we continue to sort of change how we what we're looking at, because we look at data really carefully. We run a lot of reports to figure out, everybody who's a home care provider will say that in the first 90 days, that's when you have the biggest chance of losing people. You've got to run that data, and you've got to understand how your workforce is working for you, and where are the touch points that you can actually intervene. So in terms of our turnover rate, in order to have a 30% turnover rate, we really, really have to be actively recruiting. So this slide is really more about recruiting. And we've increased our recruiting numbers this year by 50%. But I think what's important about this is we consistently recruit 10 to 15 caregivers a month. We never stop and say we have enough or we don't have enough. I think it's that consistent recruitment that you always need this pipeline. We have orientations, in-office orientations every 2 weeks. We try to help everybody that comes in for their orientation and their onboarding leave with a shift. We're trying to really get good at how we do this and to do it all the time. And I think this one seems a little obvious, but what we weren't doing as well that we're doing better now is that the recruitment team is working really closely with the op team, so we can be really more intentional about who we hire, the geography that they're in, and the actual shifts that we need. Because again, the goal being that we get these people out there as fast as they can, or they're going to go to one of these other agencies. So however you do it, you have to figure out a way to do that. And then this robust referral payout structure, we've always provided sign-on bonuses or done something, but we also determined through a lot of our reporting that absolutely, and we use Indeed and all of the other ones that everybody has to use in order to get folks in there. But what we have figured out is that our best caregivers, our best source of referrals, and then following that, our best caregivers are people that have been referred by our current pool of caregivers. So we decided that we would invest in that in a big way. And so we paid out a lot in referral bonuses, both to not as much to the new caregiver, more to the caregiver that referred them, although we're rethinking that a little bit. And when I was at a national conference the other day, we pay it out through almost the course of a year. Now organizations are actually thinking about 3 months, and they'll pay out the whole referral bonus. So I think people are taking best practices and even saying, okay, how can I even do that better? We felt like it would help our retention to keep it a little bit longer, but some people are saying that they just decided to do it in 3 months. So just to give you a sense of our turnover. We've been in business for a long time, but even when you're in business for a long time, trying to get that sense that you really have to work at that turnover rate. And again, our biggest, our most vulnerable time is the first 30 to 60 days, and sometimes you have to be really careful, because I can say that last year we recruited X number of people, but how many of those did you actually use? And you have to make sure that you're not recruiting and then they're just staying there. We have a lot of longevity in our workforce, and we have a lot of focus group time with our workforce, and we ask them what they need and what they like about us and how we can do better. So that's just to give you a sense of that. But our retention strategies, I just wanted to give you 3 sort of examples of what we've done recently that has helped us. So we recently, because we're one of the larger private home care companies around, so we said, we're getting so big that no one really knows each other. The schedulers don't know, the case managers. And so we split the company into pods, and in each pod is a case manager, a scheduler, and a bunch of caregivers. And that has really changed the way we do work. And so much of that was about to give the client a consistent team and backup, but it was as much to give the caregiver consistent people, because we got feedback that the caregivers didn't know who to call. It was too big, we get a different person, blah, blah, blah. They don't really know us. So every caregiver is assigned to a pod. And that has really been, so when you're thinking about recruitment and retention, you're also thinking about how you operate and what you can do differently that might actually be able to retain folks. So for us, and I can go into that more, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what we do on the pod side. And the 5-star caregiver rating system has really been helpful to us because we felt like we had to sort of professionalize what we're doing. And we have, it's very extensive, you know, how people get from 3 stars to 4 stars to 5 stars. There's once they everybody who we hire starts out as 3 stars, and in 90 days, if they go to 5 stars, we pay them more, is basically what that looks like. And then in between, we have a lot of touch points with them. But for them, it sort of gave them this ability to feel like they're working towards something, and in many ways it's its own professional career track, and they really like that, and they're getting ongoing feedback. And then what else has been really interesting, and what we tied to it wasn't just salary. It was like, you're the ones who get the specialized training, you're the ones who get to use these tablets, you're the ones who get to, and that has also really helped because folks want that. So when we're recruiting people and they're working towards the 5-star, and don't forget, the 5-star is also making sure you're getting there on time. You know, there's criteria that are just about sort of the logistics of being a caregiver, but there's others that have to do with judgment and reliability and feedback from family and feedback from staff. There's a lot that goes into this rubric, and it was really well thought out by my team, who has been doing this for a while. But, and then finally, the specialized training and career pathways, and thank you for bringing that article. I have my own PR firm right here, that's great. But, so dementia training, for example, is something that we're doing that's really cool. So we have it's this 16-hour training. Everybody on in my administrative team are certified dementia specialists, and then we decided that this is just too good, and our goal by the end of 2020 is to have all of our caregivers to be certified dementia specialists, but we're starting off with the ones who are 5-star. And you know, Helen left, but a big shout out to Helen, who's been a partner with us on training, and she's done a really good job. So there's like 6 dementia courses we use from Care Academy, and then we do this virtual dementia, which was, of course, what the TV and the press liked, and we have a monthly support group. So, you know, when I was thinking about how you deliver dementia care, how can we actually deliver care that's different than just saying we have a dementia specialty? What goes deep into it? And the answer was, it's about the people that we employ. It's not about some shiny object. So it's really training up the staff that we have and making sure that they have a place to sort of go and do this. So we're thinking about doing something similar for end of life, and something similar for some other kinds of specialties that we see that our clients might need more of. And I just want to end with the other big piece of the career pathways that we're doing is we have about 5 scheduling people in our office, and I think 4 out of 5 of them were caregivers in the field for us last year, and they're schedulers now. That was huge. It's working incredibly well. We've gotten feedback from our caregivers in the field saying, you finally hired people who actually get us, who know us, and you know, and these folks in the office really want the job, which has been always hard for us to recruit schedulers. So that's been a really great way for us to actually to do that. And then the other thing we do, and this is the senior housing piece of it, we've promoted people from the field into full-time jobs, and we have a bunch of contracts with senior housing, Hebrew Senior Life being one of them. Maureen's here and has been a great partner to us. And we actually assign caregivers to senior housing sites when we have enough volume to do that. And they, you know, we try to have them bill out about 70% of their time. That's our goal. And then 30% is sort of problem solving. So it actually works well because it helps our senior housing partners put out some fires, and we can actually provide short shifts, which is hard for us to do in senior housing unless we had someone on site there. And the folks love it, the caregivers love it, because they're, you know, they get to know the community, they're really part of the community. So I'm gonna stop there, but thank you.
Instead of having you ask questions of the panelists, maybe I could pose a couple of questions to you in the audience to see some of the things that you heard from the panelists, whether those are ideas that you're already engaged in or whether you have your own spin on them. But first I'll just talk with the panelists. I love what you said at the end, Andrea, about the home health aides becoming schedulers. And I think you mentioned too, a little bit, Joanne, that you might be able to create we always talk about career ladders of personal care aide to home health aide to CNA, or maybe even LPN, and I don't think that LPN one is really that realistic. We haven't seen that. Do you think that the workers in your company see people moving up and see that that's something they want to do? Joe, are your home health aide managers former home health aides?
Our field supervisor is, and again, that goes back to our newsletter. They're all out in the field, they're remote, and in order to have them appreciate, what you're doing for them, but also to understand what's going on within the organization, including how they can become, because that's a big piece, how they can move into the next level. So we do that primarily via our newsletter. Is definitely a mouthpiece for us.
Anything you want to add, Joanne? I think you said there are some people who come to the job who just want to be aides. They don't want to move up. But
Right.
other people say that. Do people come into this thinking there's a career? Is there more that we can be doing as an industry to say you can have a career in home care if you start as a home care aide? I don't know how we message that a little bit better. Anyone in the audience have a thought on that? I mean, starting to think at the home care lines, you don't have to just be a home care aide.
I'm going to talk about that. I think we've been extremely narrow in this aspect, both in terms of thinking about lattices and thinking about manager positions and thinking about aides are really good at relationship with what home care is. These are not nursing homes, these are full of homes. And there are a lot of avenues for developing both within an agency and actually within other career paths. And we totally limit them. But I've interviewed aides in the past 40 years. Most of them do not want to become nurses.
Right.
That we have.
Exactly.
Tag is becoming nurses. That's not their real skill set. Their skill sets are working with people.
Right.
So we have missed that. I think we can still learn.
And Robin will be talking right after lunch about some of those ideas. And I think we did have a career ladder program in Mass for years that tried to turn home health aides into LPNs, and it was not successful. It was money that we wasted going down the wrong path. I heard Maureen talk about this morning because I've read a lot about PHI, talking about we have to look at older workers now in the home care space because there's not enough young people. The demographics are there. This might be a question, I heard no one on the panel say it, and so I might pose it also either to them or anyone here. Has anyone tried a strategy specifically to attract older workers? And we have, I think, some folks from the Mass Hire boards here in the audience, and I'd love to hear if they have any thoughts on, are they seeing older workers, people over 50, coming into the workforce saying, geez, if I had a choice, do I want to be a bank teller for $15 an hour? Or maybe I could be a home health aide, and all the things that Joanne talked about sort of a little bit altruistic and a little bit about sort of finding fulfillment. And if nobody has an answer to that, then that says to me we have a lot of work to do in the industry to sort of think about that and work with Governor's Task Force. Anyone have a thought on that? And I'll turn to the panel too.
Well, so right now, from that side, where brought towards what's work. We've had a mix of people, so we have had some older workers who come in who are interested in becoming trained as an HHA or CNA, but we've also had somebody as young as 18 years old come in, so I think it really ranges a bit. I do think, I do agree with your point that I think it is captured in this, so that's not the bar institutes who are becoming in our training. But one of the things that I heard from a couple of the different presenters has been just that person who's created who wants to do this. They're really interested in helping people. And we hear that during the interview process when they're coming into the programs. We have an awesome training provider, the Academy for Healthcare Training, as he comes in. And, they're talking to people in the first couple of classes. We're talking to people before they even get in. And we say to them, if you want to do manufacturing, or you want to do finance or banking, or you want to work in a store, those are great options too. But this is a very particular skill set, and it's really about the person and the giving back that's going to happen. They come in with all different stories of why they want to be in home health, and I think that's a really critical piece that who gets into this field.
Anyone else have a thought on that?
Yeah. I was just going to say that I've seen a lot of people who have had a lot of issues with their own parents or a spouse, and then that sort of catapults them into wanting to do this. And a lot of them are professional people that decide they want to do something that sort of helps, and then they'll either think about sort of a GCM role, or they'll think about, how can I do more direct work? And, and I think that goes to sort of one of the things that we're thinking about, which is broadening the scope of what these folks do that we send into the home, because yes, there's a lot of ADL needs, but there's also a lot of needs of just sort of coaching that's not a GCM level, that's just like coaching and supporting and helping, that whether they be older workers or whether they be people who might not want to do hands-on work. And boy, if we can sort of make that a home health, like make that part of, okay, you can do this, or you can do this, or you can do this. I met with this woman a couple of days ago. She was in her 70s, and I was just blown away by her. And I kept envisioning her sitting with one of our clients and thinking about how cool would it be that she helped. We get these clients who just, are just really extraordinary people, and they're having a tough time, and to have someone like her there would be such a cool thing. So I feel like if we could think more broadly about that, and that as we're thinking about like tracks for home health aides, it doesn't have to be, let's create a track that isn't just about being a CNA or an HHA. It's about being that person that can coach someone through a tough time and make that part of our industry.
The challenge that we have at Aberdeen is that the young people coming in to apply do not want to come into an entry-level position. They are an entry-level person, but they want to come into some sort of, desk job with a private bathroom. I don't have that, so they're not going to have that. But there is a reluctance for people to start at the beginning. And I think that's what's difficult when we've actually stopped using the people from the Red Cross, and I'm sorry about that. But the people that we were getting came in with the expectation that they're going to start in some sort of mid-level job. My friend is working over doing such and such in some publishing company, and she's getting paid, much more than I am. So the older worker also has life experience, and isn't that what the elders really are going to resonate with? Sadly, I think we have to be honest and look at our culture. Most of our young people do not have a clue how to talk to older people. They're separated from their grandparents. We don't have that intergenerational living very much anymore, so the familiarity with someone who's old or failing or dying is uncomfortable for people. So when you take a retired nurse, you take Joe Mary's mom, who just retired at 80 plus, and you take these retired nurses. I have a whole crop of retired nurses. I have a woman who was doing research at Dana-Farber. She got breast cancer. She was profoundly impacted by the experience. She left her job in research in a lab, and she came to work for Aberdeen. She just retired. I think she's 70, but she was with me for about 12 years. So I think when we think about the motivation, about what's bringing people to the application, and what they have to offer, because maybe to an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, maybe they're not at that altruistic point. Like, I like to help people, but whoa, taking them to the bathroom, that was not what I had in mind for helping them. I wanted to get them a cup of coffee. So all that goes into this, it's so, you peel the onion, there's so many layers to this, but the older workers have life experience, and they have a lot to offer in terms of communication skills. How do you talk to your elder? Can they hear you? If we take it right back to the basics and think about that, I think exactly what Pat just said. That's a workforce that has a lot to offer to us and to our clients.
Andrea, you mentioned dementia training, possibly doing end-of-life training. You mentioned sending people communication skills. Joe, you said you do a lot of your own training in-house as well. Is your training incorporate some of those skill sets, or is it truly the didactic, Medicare, infection control? Do you sort of have a broader approach to that? Because you said you've been successful once you do your own training that they stay.
We definitely have a broader, a broader curriculum above and beyond the Medicare certified, and I think that's what allows us to produce a better quality home health aid down the road. And we also, on top of the Medicare certification, we've really focused on our Alzheimer's dementia population as well. And so anyone going through our class gets the Alzheimer's dementia training as well upon graduation from the class, prior to graduating from the class, for that reason, because everyone can use that skill set and how to, understand and better communicate to someone who's along the spectrum of, dementia to Alzheimer's. So we definitely offer a more broad array of, of curriculum. And then we also we provide, free in-services, to ensure that our aides get their required in-services, and we tailor our in-services to our clients that we're servicing. So if we have a high CHF or, COPD, Alzheimer's dementia is always at least 2 hours of that, 12 hours of in-services that they get. So we tailor it to the clients, but also 2 other pieces that is always incorporated into our training. And I was remiss but someone had mentioned it earlier. When you're focusing on retention and you're able to retain your staff, you're able to get those staff that can communicate more effectively. They're providing a better quality. And we just found out on Monday that our agency had gone from a 3.5, and now we're a 5-star quality rating agency, and it's primarily due to our home health aides. I mean, really a big shift. There was always complaints they're showing up late, but and a lot of that was because of the turnover, missed visits. Just really focusing on that retention helped, but also adding to the education that they receive is only going to result whether you're in private pay and they want that aide, back more, want more hours from that aide, or you're getting rated from on your VNA or your hospice.
Hi, my name is Tatiana, and I'm also from Concord, like the OG Karen herself. I just want to thank you all for your time this morning, and I'd love to know if you incorporate any financial planning in terms of a support service for your workers, the folks that you have worked with, just because I think that for me personally, I'll put myself out there. I'm from Boston. My family doesn't come from a lot of money, and I think there's this misconception of folks being bad with money, but I don't think you can be bad with money when you never had enough. So, because the money's just not going to add up at the end of the day, right? So I would just love to hear if you've incorporated financial planning. I don't like financial literacy because that implies illiteracy. But any financial planning, would love to hear that, or if it's on the horizon at all.
That's actually a very good point. And honestly, we don't do enough of it. I mean, we have an employee wellness program, and that is part that they can get up to 4 hours of whether it's counseling, financial planning, but we don't promote it enough. And that's certainly, an area that many of our staff, struggle with. So certainly should be on everyone's horizon.
If I speak like this, can you hear me? Because we have a 401k for everyone that starts, and it starts the day you work. We do a 4% match. Mass General Partners only does a 3% match. The person who facilitates our 401k sends out a letter to every new employee. I'm the financial advisor for Aberdeen Home Care. I will meet with you privately. I will help you pick your funds. You can pick your own funds. I will help you pick your own funds. You can also, you can add as much as you want. Joanne's going to give you 4% if you do 4%. So we do. We send out a letter, so we have that. It doesn't cost me anything because I'm paying him to facilitate the 401k. But it's another service that they can take advantage of. I'd say about 65% of our employees are meeting with him, are actually engaged with the financial plan.
I just want to add something, and not nearly as impressive as that. That's really great. I love to hear that. A couple things. I just wanted to mention that one of the things we're looking at that a lot of people nationally are looking at is daily pay for folks. And there's a company you can do to help you get that done. But so I think we're having more conversations with home health aides to understand the kind of challenges they face. And the daily pay, the idea of daily pay is really interesting, not just as a recruitment tool, but just as people need that money and to make sure they don't overdraw or whatever. But still, that's one thing I wanted to mention. The second thing that I wanted to mention that I say this only because, again, it's sort of getting inside the lives of. We had this home health aide that basically had a heart attack, and she couldn't work anymore. And the family So we initiated with the family a GoFundMe page for this woman, and it got actually some press. She lives in, the family's in Lexington. The family was so, you got to do something for this woman. She's not going to be out of work. She doesn't have this, and so this GoFundMe page, you know, we're paying her 3 installments, and it's going to be helpful. But I think, again, like thinking creatively about solutions that we as employers can do to support employees who don't have enough money. Yes, we need to be able to do things like that, and then we also need to think creatively about, even in situations it's such huge impact on people, what do they do when they get sick? So.
Thank you for mentioning the daily pay, Andrea, because that gives me an opportunity to be a mini commercial. Later this month, we'll have our Star and Innovation Awards at Granite Links, and generally people tend to only go to those if they know someone who's winning, but one of our member agencies actually submitted for an innovation their program to provide daily pay to aides, and it's really interesting. They have set it up and they have it tied to submission of documentation, so that it gives incentives to get the documentation in, because if you get the documentation in on that day, you can get paid the next day for that day. And they've also figured out some of the, you know, if you look at Venmos and PayPals that we're probably all doing, but we don't even think about what they charge us for a transaction. But when they're going to take $1 out of every transaction, it doesn't make it worth it. So I think there are people in the industry looking at how to figure out, get beyond that. So in fact, is it we absorb the cost, obviously. You can't pass that on to the worker. But I think that's a really innovative issue. And I wanted to say, Joe, when you mentioned that you have a car, I was talking to a home care agency recently who also had an emergency car, but they said there was a double-edged sword. Not really. The worker would call in sick or call in sick and say, my car's not working. And then you say, well, you can use our car today. Oh, never mind. I guess never mind. I think my car's working again now. So I don't know whether you've had that experience. I'm not, it's right before lunch, and I'm not going to ask anyone this question, but I'd love to hear more from people in the audience, not necessarily right now to this question because it's so big. We keep hearing about this benefit cliff, and sometimes you can get to a point where you pay the aides or benefit them too much. This is a lot on the certified side, and suddenly then they lose their food stamps, or they lose their, their mass health. You talked about having to give up insurance. So it's a bigger question than what we can answer today. If anyone has a thought on it, I'd be willing to hear it. But I'm, curious if anyone runs up against that. I don't want to work more than 25 hours a week because I'll lose my food stamps. Do you struggle with that, Joe? You hear that?
Yeah, we do. In recruitment, and obviously you want to have as many aides working as full time as possible. But we have had that 25 hours, we've had 10 hours. So really understanding, the poverty level and the hours is very important.
Yeah. And as an industry, I think that's something we might need to tackle. If we have a shortage of workers who are willing to work more but can't, right. And maybe, Robin, you've heard something, you can talk about this later. But other questions for the panel, I don't want to monopolize them, or other comments, someone who has out there that has a program that they want to share, something, innovative training program, innovative recruitment strategy, or questions for the panelists.
Question, so there's been a lot of discussion about career latticing and upskilling and things like that. I've done work with the community colleges and recognizing that not all community colleges are offering programs that they might necessarily want. So when you're thinking about career advancements with your staff, I'm wondering if you're working with your community colleges to see what programs might be available for that, and if there are, agreements. I know that's state and polio partnerships with their local employers, and so just thinking about ways that you might build those relationships so that the workers who may not want to be a nurse, maybe they want to be a social worker or get into case management, caseworkers and things like that, they can stay within your agencies, but through partnerships with the community colleges work towards that. So I'm just wondering if you've built those relationships and then looking at what the community colleges are offering.
I can just speak to what we've done, because we're right across the street is a community college from us. And we've partnered with them to share content resources for training. They do a home health aid training program, CNA. So we're invited in to offer, be one of a few to be able to, recruit them for a job. So that's definitely a given. But we've worked with them to try and establish a career path for some of our home health aides. We've promoted it in our newsletter. Really the only thing that has come out of that is they've given and have offered a couple free courses for our home certified aides to become an LPN, to matriculate into that. So we've been able to see if an aide likes it. If they're interested, they can apply for it. But again, not everyone necessarily is interested in going into that nursing path. So we haven't really done more than that, but at least it's we have a good communication with them, and they do graduate, a decent amount of CNAs too.
We've worked a little bit with BU Cater to think about maybe case management programs for some, but we haven't done anything formal with that, which I think we're talking about it. We've done it over the years, but we just, I think it would be a good conversation as we continue to get more robust on how we're thinking about upskilling people.
Yeah, several years ago, there were some focus groups going around in I read, going into each region and talking with community colleges and talking with employers and seeing how to sort of marry the two.
Yeah.
Because you might have a group of workers that are interested in one particular program, but the community college isn't necessarily offering that program because there isn't enough interest. But by building those communications and partnerships, that could potentially grow. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's so many allied health programs, at least on the North Shore where I am. We've had a very hard time penetrating into those curriculums to say your social work people would really benefit from being face to face with these elders. That might not be their career path in direct care, but all the communication with the family and the doctor and the nurse, that's really in your wheelhouse, and we've had a hard time. We're helping them to understand the value, and we're offering their students great jobs, and we've had a hard time getting them to engage. Sadly.
Yeah, it might be a longer-term strategy for us to really try. I don't know if we can meet globally with some of the community colleges or set up regional meetings with some of the agencies in the community colleges and see if we can make some of those connections happen.
Yeah, real quick, I know Bristol Community College just recently entered into a partnership with Coastline to take their occupational therapy students and bring them into homes with folks with dementia to give the OT students that real experience, and then it also supports Coastline in what they're trying to do because they're able to keep the students. Once the student sort of builds that relationship over the semester, they're anticipating many of them might want to continue on while they are in school studying OT. So, there's that as well.
We do have, with our local community college and Salem State University, we do have their nurses. We with Mass General Physical Therapy, also occupational therapy. We have them do a clinical rotation, not specifically for aid, but just to exposure to home care and hospice. And social worker, we have the same thing with the social worker through our hospice. They do a rotation, but it's just good exposure to home care and hospice.
And one of our other initiatives, we're also looking at the nursing workforce on a parallel track, and we had a similar symposium earlier this year on that, and talking with some of the schools of nursing, and they're saying exactly what you said. If we can get a nurse to be a home health aide while she's or he is in school, they're far more likely to consider home care as a career than if suddenly they get to their fourth year. The only place they've ever been is in a hospital, except for maybe one day rotation somewhere in a community health center. So I think the flip side of the question is we don't necessarily want home health aides to be on career paths to nurses, but if we can get nurses into home care sooner, maybe working as aides, as you just said, we might have a better chance of holding on to them, solving that problem.